The verdict of fear, the grand chamber of the Galactic Senate stretched upward like a crystallized cathedral, its walls pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns that shifted with each speaker's words. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the designated platform for probationary species, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives of 43 civilizations. Each alien form was more exotic than the last, from the gaseous nebulae floating in their containment spheres to the silicon-based quartzians whose bodies chimed like wind chimes with every movement. Elena had rehearsed this moment for months. Earth's future depended on her words today. The isolation protocol had been in effect for 75 years, ever since humanity's disastrous first contact with the Galactic Collective. 3/4 of a century of being labeled too dangerous, too unpredictable, too primitive to join the community of civilized worlds. Supreme Arbiter Zelthax raised one of his 4 crystalline appendages, bringing the massive chamber to silence. His species, the Zephyrians, had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago, choosing to inhabit bodies of pure energy contained within geometric shells. When he spoke, his voice resonated directly in the minds of all present, translated perfectly into each being's native understanding. We gather today to review the case of species 7834C, self-designated as humanity, originating from the 3rd planet of System Sol 9. The question before us remains unchanged. Should the isolation protocols be lifted, modified, or extended for another standard cycle? Zelthax's form flickered with patterns of judicial neutrality. Ambassador Rodriguez, you may present Earth's position. Elena stepped forward, her boots clicking against the platform's surface. She wore humanity's finest diplomatic attire, a sleek suit that incorporated elements from Earth's major cultures, designed to show unity without aggression. Honored representatives, she began, her voice steady despite the weight on her shoulders. I stand before you not to deny humanity's past mistakes, but to demonstrate how far we have come. 75 years of isolation have taught us patience. We have used this time to study, to grow, to understand our place in a larger universe. A ripple of skeptical energy passed through the assembly. The crystalline collective, a hive mind species that appeared as interconnected geometric patterns floating in formation, projected their thoughts into the chamber. The humans speak of growth, yet our sensors detect increased military production in their system. They build warships while claiming peaceful intentions. Elena had expected this. Those ships are for defense, honored collective. When you are isolated and labeled dangerous by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, wouldn't you ensure your own protection? We have not ventured beyond our designated boundaries. Not once in 75 years have we violated the terms of our isolation. Representative Korvax of the Thermian Empire stood, his molten rock form glowing brighter with agitation. You speak of boundaries and terms, but let us not forget why these restrictions exist. Show them the records, Arbiter. The center of the chamber filled with a holographic recreation, and Elena's heart sank. She knew what was coming. The scene showed humanity's first contact vessel, the UES Harmony, encountering a Zephyrian scout ship near Neptune 75 years ago. The human crew, led by Captain Maria Santos, had attempted standard greeting protocols. But something had gone wrong. The translation matrices had failed, turning peaceful greetings into what the Zephyrians interpreted as threats. The recording showed the Zephyrian ship moving closer, using their standard containment field to stabilize the human vessel for proper communication. But the humans, seeing their ship suddenly immobilized by an unknown force, had panicked. Captain Santos had ordered defensive measures. The Harmony had fired its mining lasers meant for asteroid extraction at the Zephyrian ship. They attacked a peaceful vessel, Korvax narrated as the recording played. When faced with the unknown, their first instinct was violence. Elena wanted to scream that it was fear, not aggression, that any species would have reacted similarly when their ship was suddenly paralyzed by an unknown force. But she had made these arguments before. The Senate had heard them all. The recording continued, showing the aftermath. The Zephyrian ship, though undamaged by the primitive lasers, had called for backup. Within hours, a full galactic collective fleet had surrounded the Harmony. The humans, terrified and confused, had nearly overloaded their reactor in a desperate attempt to escape. Only the quick thinking of a junior Zephyrian officer, who had managed to establish basic communication, had prevented a nuclear explosion that would have destroyed several ships. Furthermore, Korvax continued. Let us examine their history. The hologram shifted, showing scenes from Earth's past. Wars, conflicts, nuclear weapons, environmental destruction. They wage war against their own kind. They poisoned their own planet. They create weapons designed for no purpose other than mass destruction. Even their entertainment celebrates violence. Elena's hands clenched at her sides. They always showed the worst, never the best. Never the humanitarian efforts, the scientific achievements, the art, the music, the countless acts of kindness and sacrifice that defined humanity just as much as its struggles. If I may, a new voice interjected. It was Ambassador Thymel of the Etherian Republic. Beings of pure thought who appeared as shimmering clouds of consciousness. The humans interest us. Their emotional capacity is unlike anything we have encountered. They form bonds not just with their own species but with others. They keep non-sapient animals as companions. They attribute personality to inanimate objects. This suggests a capacity for empathy that could be valuable. Or dangerous, countered the representative from the Void Touched, whose species had evolved in the darkness between galaxies. Emotion without logic leads to chaos. They make decisions based on feelings rather than calculation. This makes them unpredictable, unreliable. Elena was finally given permission to respond. You speak of our emotions as weaknesses, but they are our strength. Yes, we feel deeply. Yes, we sometimes act on those feelings. But this is what drives us to protect, to sacrifice, to push beyond our limitations. When a human parent sees their child in danger, they become capable of extraordinary things. When we see suffering, even in strangers, we are compelled to help. You call this dangerous. We call it compassion. The crystalline collective resonated with skepticism, compassion that extends to violence when threatened. Your own history shows this pattern repeatedly, as does the history of every species in this chamber, Elena shot back, her diplomatic composure finally cracking. The Zephyrians fought the Dark Wars 3 million years ago. The Thermian Empire conquered 17 systems before achieving enlightenment. The Void Touched literally consumed entire civilizations before joining the collective. Yet you judge humanity for being younger, for still growing? Arbiter Zeltex pulsed with colors of warning. Ambassador Rodriguez, please maintain proper decorum. Elena took a breath, centering herself. My apologies, Arbiter, but I must ask this assembly to consider what you truly fear about humanity. Is it our capacity for violence? Every species here has that history. Is it our emotions? The Etherians themselves acknowledge these could be valuable. Is it our unpredictability? Or is it simply that we remind you of what you once were before millennia, of evolution and development? The chamber fell silent. Several representatives exchanged what Elena had learned to recognize as uncomfortable glances, despite their alien features. Finally, Zelthax called for the vote. All those in favor of lifting the isolation protocols for humanity? 3 lights appeared in the vast chamber. The Etherians, surprisingly, a small faction of progressives from the nebulae, and the Forgotten Ones, an ancient species that rarely participated, but had chosen to support humanity for reasons they never explained. All those in favor of maintaining current protocols for another standard cycle? The chamber blazed with lights. 37 representatives voted to keep humanity isolated. Elena's heart sank even as she had expected this outcome. The motion carries. Humanity's isolation will continue for another standard cycle of 100 years. This assembly is now in recess before we address the next matter. Elena stood frozen on the platform as the representatives began to disperse, their various forms of locomotion creating a bizarre ballet of movement. Another century. Another 100 years of Earth being alone in a crowded galaxy. Her children's children would grow up knowing they were considered too dangerous to join the community of worlds. She was about to leave the platform when her personal communicator vibrated with an emergency pattern. Not Earth's emergency signal, but something else. An encrypted frequency she didn't recognize. Elena glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, then activated her privacy shield and opened the message. The transmission was audio only, crackling with interference and distance. But the voice that came through was unmistakably terrified, speaking in the common galactic tongue with a meridian accent. To anyone who receives this signal, please help us. The colony of New Meridian is under attack. Something came from the void between stars. Our defense grid has fallen. The galactic fleet sent to help us has been destroyed. Thousands are dying. The creatures are unlike anything in our databases. They consume energy itself. They adapt to every weapon. Please, if anyone hears this, we need help. The children, We have so many children here. Please, anyone help us. The message repeated on a loop. Elena checked the timestamp. This signal was less than 6 hours old, but it had been sent on deprecated emergency channels that most modern galactic communication systems no longer monitored. Only Earth, with their supposedly primitive technology that maintained compatibility with older systems, had picked it up. Elena's mind raced. New Meridian was a peaceful colony, home to over 3 million beings, mostly families and researchers. It was located in the Outer Rim, far from the core worlds. If the galactic fleet had already been destroyed, the Senate would take days to organize another response. By then it would be too late. She looked at the chamber, where the representatives who had just voted to continue humanity's isolation were chatting casually, unaware of the crisis unfolding in the Outer Rim. They considered humans too dangerous to integrate into their society. But maybe, just maybe, dangerous was exactly what New Meridian needed right now. Elena made a decision that would either vindicate humanity or confirm everyone's worst fears about them. She opened a quantum-encrypted channel to Earth Command, bypassing 17 treaties and protocols in the process. "Admiral Chen," she said when the connection stabilized. "This is Ambassador Rodriguez. I'm sending you coordinates and a distress signal from New Meridian. 3 million lives are at stake, and the galactic fleet has failed. How quickly can you mobilize the 7th Fleet?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Admiral Chen's gravelly voice responded. "Elena, are you asking us to violate the isolation protocols? You know what that could mean for Earth. I'm asking you to do what humans do best, Admiral. The impossible when people need us most." Another pause, then she heard Chen bark orders in the background. "The 7th Fleet can be ready in 2 hours. We'll need to use the emergency jump drives. They're untested for that distance. Admiral, if we don't try, 3 million beings die. Then we try. Chen out." Elena closed the channel and looked back at the Senate chamber. Through the transparent walls, she could see the stars, and somewhere among them, New Meridian was burning while the galaxy's most civilized species debated and deliberated. Humanity had been called dangerous, violent, unpredictable. Today they would find out if those traits could be turned into salvation. When Darkness Falls, Captain James Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, flagship of Earth's 7th Fleet, as the emergency jump drives powered up with a sound like reality itself groaning under pressure. Around him, his crew worked with the focused intensity that came from years of training for a moment they'd hoped would never come. Through the viewports he could see the other 14 ships of the fleet, their hulls gleaming with the rough, functional design that the Galactic Collective found so primitive. "Jump coordinates locked in, Captain," reported Navigator Williams, her fingers dancing across interfaces that combined human intuition with reverse-engineered alien technology. "But sir, I need to remind you that jumping this far exceeds all our safety parameters. We could materialize inside a star, or scattered across a light year of space." Morgan nodded grimly. "Noted, Navigator. But 3 million lives don't have time for us to play it safe." He activated the fleet-wide communication. "All vessels, this is Prometheus. We jump in 30 seconds. Remember, we're violating every treaty Earth has signed. If this goes wrong, we won't just be risking our lives, but humanity's future. Anyone who wants out, speak now." 14 confirmations came back immediately. Not a single hesitation. "That's why I love you, beautiful bastards," Morgan muttered. "All ships prepare for emergency jump. May whatever god you believe in have mercy on us, because the physics won't." The jump drives engaged simultaneously, and reality twisted. The sensation was unlike the smooth transitions of Galactic Collective faster-than-light travel. This was raw, violent, like being turned inside out while falling in all directions at once. Morgan gripped his command chair as the universe became a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. Then, suddenly, they were elsewhere. "Report," Morgan barked as his vision cleared. "All ships accounted for," came the reply from his operations officer. "Hull integrity holding, but the jump drives are fried. We won't be jumping home anytime soon. Position? 3,000 kilometers from New Meridian. Captain, you need to see this." The main screen activated and Morgan's breath caught. New Meridian, a jewel of a planet known for its crystal cities and peaceful inhabitants, was under siege. But the attackers were unlike anything in Earth's databases or stolen galactic intelligence. They appeared as writhing shadows with substance, dark matter given hunger and purpose. Where they touched the planet's surface, the very ground seemed to dissolve into nothingness. Fragments of galactic collective ships floated in orbit, their advanced hulls torn apart like paper. The supposedly invincible Zephyrian energy shields had failed. The Thermian armor that could withstand supernovas had been breached. Whatever these entities were, they had rendered the galaxy's greatest technologies useless. Incoming transmission, announced Communications Officer Park. It's from the surface. The screen shifted to show a Meridian administrator, her iridescent features dulled with exhaustion and fear. Behind her, other beings huddled in what appeared to be an underground shelter. The sounds of children crying could be heard in the background. Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves. Are you here to evacuate survivors? Our defense grid has failed. The galactic fleet has been destroyed. These creatures adapt to every weapon within minutes. We have 17 million children in the shelters, but they're breaking through. Please, whoever you are, help us. Morgan stood, his scarred face set with determination. This is Captain James Morgan of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We're here to help. Can you tell us more about these entities? The administrator's large eyes widened further. Humans, but you're in isolation. You're not supposed to. How did you even know? Questions later, survival now. What can you tell us about their weaknesses? They have none that we can find. Energy weapons feed them. Kinetic weapons pass through them. They consume shields like food. They're killing us, Captain. They're killing our children. Morgan turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Torres. Analysis? Torres was already working, her screens filled with data streams. Captain, these things are operating on a completely different physical principle. They're not quite matter, not quite energy. They exist in a state between dimensions. That's why conventional weapons don't work. So how do we fight them? Torres paused, then looked up with a mixture of fear and excitement. We don't fight them, sir. We do what humans have always done. We get creative, and possibly a little insane. Morgan grinned, the expression making several of his bridge crew shift nervously. I love insane. What do you have in mind? Those entities are consuming energy, right? All forms of energy. What if we give them exactly what they want, but more than they can handle? A feedback loop. Overload them with so much chaotic energy that they can't process it? You want to force feed them? Essentially. But we'll need bait. Something with enough energy to attract them all to one point. Morgan understood immediately. The Prometheus. Sir, that's suicide, his first officer protested. Maybe. Or maybe it's just human. Morgan turned to his crew. We're going to turn the Prometheus into the biggest energy buffet these things have ever seen. Overload our reactor. Activate every system, broadcast on every frequency. When they swarm us, we detonate everything at once. The other ships will use that moment to deploy kinetic weapons, old-fashioned chemical explosives, anything that might work while they're destabilized. Captain, Williams said quietly, the crew will evacuate to the other ships first. I'll handle the Prometheus alone. Like hell you will, Torres said, standing. If you're going down with the ship, Captain, you'll need someone to manage those energy outputs. That's my job. Mine too, added Williams. One by one, 7 members of his bridge crew volunteered to stay. Morgan felt his throat tighten with emotion, that dangerous human trait the Galactic Collective feared so much. All right, you magnificent idiots. Let's show the galaxy what humans are really made of. All non-essential crew, evacuate immediately. Everyone else, let's turn this ship into a bomb that'll make our nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. As evacuation pods launched, and the skeleton crew worked to overload every system on the Prometheus, the shadow entities took notice. They turned from the planet, drawn by the massive energy signature the human ship was generating. Thousands of them, writhing through space in defiance of physics, converging on the Prometheus. Fleet Command, this is Morgan. When we detonate, hit them with everything you've got. Chemical rockets, railguns, hell, throw rocks if you have to. And for God's sake, get those people off the planet. The entities struck the Prometheus like a wave of hungry darkness. The ship's hull began to dissolve, but Morgan and his crew kept pushing more power through the systems. The reactor redlined, then went beyond any safe parameter. Energy cascade in 30 seconds, Torres reported, her voice steady despite the ship disintegrating around them. It's been an honor, Morgan said to his remaining crew. The honor's ours, Captain, they replied in unison. The Prometheus exploded with the force of a small star. But instead of vaporizing instantly, the shadow entities seemed to freeze, overwhelmed by the chaotic energy release. They writhed, twisted, and for the first time seemed vulnerable. The rest of the Seventh Fleet opened fire with everything humanity had considered obsolete. Chemical missiles, projectile weapons, even mining charges. The destabilized entities, unable to adapt quickly enough to the primitive assault, began to dissolve. On the planet's surface, the Meridian Administrator watched in awe as the shadow creatures retreated, then dissipated entirely. The human ships, battered but intact, began deploying rescue shuttles to evacuate the most vulnerable. Commander Sarah Chen, who had taken command of the fleet after the Prometheus's sacrifice, received a transmission from the planet. Behind the Administrator, millions of beings had emerged from their shelters, looking up at the human ships with expressions of awe and gratitude. "You saved us," the Administrator said, her voice breaking with emotion. "The Galactic Collective's greatest technologies failed, but you saved us. How?" Chen's response was simple. "We're human. We're good at doing stupid things for the right reasons. Now let's get your people to safety before we discuss the politics of what just happened." As the evacuation continued, word of the human intervention spread through quantum channels across the galaxy. The same species that had been voted too dangerous to join civilized society had sacrificed themselves to save millions of beings who had voted against them just hours before. In the Galactic Senate, Arbiter Zeltax received the reports with what could only be described as stunned silence. The crystalline collective resonated with new harmonics, reassessing their calculations about humanity. The Thermian representative stood motionless, his molten form flickering with uncertainty. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez entered the reconvened chamber to find every representative waiting for her. This time she didn't stand at the probationary platform. Arbiter Zeltax himself had descended to meet her at the chamber's center. "Ambassador Rodriguez," he began, his energy form pulsing with colors Elena had never seen before. "The humans violated 17 treaties. They broke isolation protocols. They acted without authorization from this body." Elena lifted her chin. "Yes, we did. And in doing so, they saved 3 million lives that our own forces could not protect. They solved a problem our greatest minds couldn't comprehend. They sacrificed themselves for beings who had rejected them." Zelthax paused. "We have misjudged humanity." The vote was called again, this time with no debate. 43 lights blazed in unanimous agreement. The isolation protocols were lifted immediately. As Elena stood in that chamber, she thought of Captain Morgan and his crew, who had proven that being dangerous wasn't about the capacity for violence. It was about the willingness to face danger for others. The galaxy had feared humanity's passion, their unpredictability, their emotions. They hadn't understood that these traits, when channeled through human concepts of sacrifice and protection, became their greatest strengths. The Meridian Administrator appeared on the main screen, addressing the entire Senate. "The humans didn't save us because they had superior technology or advanced evolution. They saved us because they saw our children crying and couldn't stand by and do nothing. They saved us because their dangerous nature means they'll throw themselves into the void to protect complete strangers. If that's what being dangerous means, then perhaps we all need to be a little more dangerous." Earth's integration into the Galactic Collective would still take time. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and conflicts. But on that day, the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest threat wasn't their weapons or their emotions. It was their unstoppable determination to help, no matter the cost. And in the vast cosmos where ancient civilizations had grown cold with logic and calculation, that dangerous human spark of compassion would prove to be exactly what the galaxy needed to face the darkness that lurked between the stars.